In one devastating day, Tessa Rowe loses her job, her fiancé, and finds herself stranded in a storm with a wrecked car. When a mysterious stranger named Levi offers her shelter, she has no idea that this encounter will change both their lives forever. A story of second chances, healing, and finding love after loss. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. The sky darkened as Tessa Rowe gripped the steering wheel of her old Honda. Rain pounded against the windshield, matching the tears streaming down her face. Just hours ago, her entire life had fallen apart. First, her boss had called her into his office. "We're downsizing," he'd said, not even looking her in the eye. "Today will be your last day." Tessa had barely made it to her car when her phone rang. It was Mark, her fiancé of 3 years. "We need to talk," he'd said, his voice cold. An hour later, she sat across from him at their favorite cafe, watching him twist the engagement ring off her finger. "I've met someone else," Mark said. "I'm sorry, but I think deep down you knew this wasn't working." The final blow came when she returned to pack her things from their shared house. Mark's name was the only one on the deed. She had nothing. "You should be out by the weekend," he'd told her, as if they hadn't planned a life together. Now, driving aimlessly down a country road, Tessa couldn't see through her tears. The rain grew heavier and her wipers couldn't keep up. Her hands trembled on the wheel. How could this happen, she whispered to herself. Everything gone in one day. The car hit a patch of water. Tessa felt the steering wheel jerk in her hands. She screamed as the Honda spun off the road and slid into a ditch with a sickening crunch. When the world stopped spinning, Tessa sat frozen. She tried to start the engine, but it only made a terrible grinding noise. She grabbed her phone. No service. Rain hammered on the roof as she looked out at the empty country road stretching in both directions. "Hello?" she called out uselessly, her voice breaking. "Is anybody there?" Only thunder answered. Tessa hugged herself, shivering. The temperature was dropping as night approached. She was truly alone, stranded in the middle of nowhere with no job, no home, and no one who cared where she was. The sound of an approaching engine made her head snap up. Headlights cut through the rain. A pickup truck slowed and pulled over. Tessa's heart pounded. Help or danger? She didn't know which was worse right now. A tall figure stepped out, wearing a weathered coat and wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. He approached her car slowly. Tessa's hand hovered over the lock button. The man bent down to her window level. "You all right, miss?" he asked, his voice low and calm. Something in his tone made Tessa roll down her window. "My car." I skidded off. "The road." "Storm's getting worse," he said simply. "Let me pull you out." Without waiting for an answer, he returned to his truck. Tessa watched as he attached a chain to her front bumper, then skillfully pulled her car from the ditch. When her Honda was safely on the roadside, he checked under the hood, his movements, efficient and practiced. "Radiator's damaged," he said, closing the hood. "Won't get far tonight." "I don't have anyone to call," Tessa admitted, her voice small. The man studied her for a moment. "Name's Levi," he finally said. "Got a cabin about 2 miles from here. You can stay until the storm passes." Tessa hesitated. Getting into a stranger's truck went against everything she'd been taught, but something about his quiet strength felt safe. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Tessa." Levi nodded once, helped her grab her purse and overnight bag, and they drove in silence through the worsening storm. The cabin was small but solid. A porch wrapped around it, and smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone fireplace, casting warm light over simple, well-made furniture. It smelled of wood smoke and coffee. "Bathrooms through there," Levi said, hanging his coat and hat on a hook. "You can dry off. I'll make something hot." In the small bathroom, Tessa stared at her reflection. Her mascara had run, leaving dark tracks down her cheeks. Her blouse was soaked and her hair hung in wet tangles. She looked as wrecked on the outside as she felt inside. When she emerged, Levi had set a mug of tea on the table. He was tall, she realized, with broad shoulders and strong hands. His face was all angles and planes, with a strong jaw covered in stubble. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, deep blue and watchful, like he was used to seeing trouble before it arrived. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her cold fingers around the warm mug. "For stopping." Most people wouldn't. Levi shrugged. Storm's bad business. No one should be out in it. They sat in comfortable silence as rain lashed the windows. Tessa felt oddly at peace in this stranger's home, more than she'd felt in her own lately. You got someone to call? Levi asked after a while. Let them know you're safe. Tessa's eyes welled up again. She shook her head. No, not anymore. Levi didn't press. Instead, he stood and moved to a chest, pulling out a flannel shirt and sweatpants. These'll be big, but they're dry. That simple kindness broke something in Tessa. The tears came in a flood, and once they started, she couldn't stop them. All the pain of the day poured out of her. Levi sat across from her, silent and steady. He didn't offer empty comfort or tell her not to cry. He just waited, a quiet presence while she fell apart. I'm sorry, she finally said, wiping her eyes. It's been the worst day of my life. Sometimes talking helps, he said. Sometimes not. Up to you. Something about his lack of pressure made it easier. The story tumbled out. The job, the fiancé, the house. Her entire life collapsed in hours. 3 years with Mark, she said. 3 years planning a future that's just gone. She looked up. Have you ever had everything you counted on disappear all at once? A shadow crossed Levi's face. Yes. He didn't elaborate and Tessa didn't ask. There was a story there, but she respected his privacy, the way he'd respected hers. The night deepened. Levi cooked a simple meal of beans and cornbread. They ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. After dinner, Tessa helped wash the dishes, finding strange comfort in the ordinary task. Take the bed, Levi said, nodding toward a door. I'll sleep here. He gestured to the couch. I can't take your bed, Tessa protested. Already decided, he said with finality, but not unkindly. The bedroom was as simple as the rest of the cabin. A handmade quilt covered the bed. No photos, no personal touches. It was clean and functional, like its owner. Despite everything, Tessa slept deeply that night, lulled by the sound of rain on the roof and the knowledge that she wasn't alone. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment she was disoriented. Then the memories flooded back, the firing, the breakup, the accident. But in the morning light, the pain felt more distant. She found Levi on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the wet fields steam in the morning sun. Storm's past, he said, offering her a mug. But your car needs work. Tessa nodded, looking out at the landscape. The cabin sat on a rise overlooking meadows and forests. In the distance, she could see a larger house and farm buildings. It's beautiful here, she said softly. Helps me breathe, Levi replied. And something in the way he said it made Tessa wonder what had driven him to this isolated spot. Over the next day, they fell into an easy rhythm. Levi wasn't talkative, but when he did speak, his words carried weight. He showed her around the property, pointing out birds and plants. He taught her how to split wood for the fire, his hands guiding hers on the axe handle. In the evening, they sat by the fire. Tessa found herself telling him about growing up in a small town, about her dreams of opening her own flower shop someday, about how she'd put those dreams aside when she met Mark. Never put your dreams in someone else's pocket, Levi said. What about your dreams? Tessa asked. Levi stared into the fire for a long time. Had them once. Now I just take each day. That night, Tessa fell asleep on the couch while they talked. She woke briefly to find Levi gently covering her with a blanket, his face softer than she'd seen it. He sat by the fire, watching the flames and occasionally glancing at her, a guardian keeping the darkness at bay. By the second morning, the sun shone brightly. Levi drove her into town to a small garage where a mechanic friend looked at her car. Can't fix it until Wednesday, the mechanic said. Parts gotta come from the city. I can take you wherever you need to go, Levi offered, but his eyes held something Tessa couldn't read. I don't really have anywhere, she admitted. I was going to find a motel, figure things out. Cabin's yours until your car's fixed, Levi said simply. I'll be at the main house if you need anything. Before she could thank him properly, he was in his truck, driving away, leaving her standing by the garage with the key to his cabin in her hand. That afternoon, Tessa walked through the small town, Trying to clear her head, she passed a cafe with a "Help Wanted" sign. On impulse, she went in and spoke to the owner, a friendly woman named Betty. "You can start tomorrow if you want," Betty said after a short chat. "It's nothing fancy, but the tips are decent." Tessa left with a job and a spark of hope. Maybe she could start over here in this quiet town. Maybe everything falling apart had been leading her here. At the local market, she bought groceries, planning to cook dinner for Levi to thank him. As she waited at the checkout, she noticed a local newspaper. On the business page was a photo that made her heart stop. It was Levi, older, in a suit instead of work clothes, but unmistakably him. The headline read, "Barrett Farms expands conservation. Efforts?" Tessa quickly paid and grabbed the paper, reading as she walked. Levi Barrett wasn't just a farmer. He was Levi Barrett, heir to one of the largest agricultural fortunes in the state. The article mentioned his innovative farming practices and his reclusiveness since the tragic death of his wife 3 years ago. Tessa felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. Why hadn't he told her? Why was a millionaire living in a simple cabin pulling strangers' cars from ditches in the rain? Back at the cabin, she cooked dinner, her mind racing with questions. When headlights swept the driveway, her heart pounded. But Levi didn't come in. He left something on the porch and drove away. It was a basket with fresh bread, honey, and a handwritten note. "Hope you're settling in." Tessa stood on the porch watching his taillights disappear. The man who had saved her in the storm was not who she thought. But then, after everything she'd lost, who was she now? The question hung in the air as night fell around the cabin, and Tessa realized she needed to find Levi Barrett again. Not to confront him, but to understand why a man with everything had chosen to live with nothing. The next morning, Tessa stared at the newspaper article again. The photo of Levi in a business suit looked so different from the quiet man who had rescued her. The article mentioned his agricultural innovations, his conservation efforts, and his withdrawal from public life after his wife's death. It called him the reclusive millionaire. Tessa tucked the paper away as she prepared for her first day at Betty's cafe. The small diner was busy with the breakfast crowd when she arrived. "Morning, honey," Betty greeted her, handing over an apron. "Ready to jump in?" The work was straightforward, taking orders, serving food, refilling coffee cups. Tessa found herself smiling genuinely for the first time in days. The regular customers were friendly, curious about the newcomer but not intrusive. "You staying at the old Barrett cabin?" one elderly man asked as she poured his coffee. Tessa hesitated. "Yes, just until my car's fixed," the man nodded. "Levi's a good man, keeps to himself these days, but good blood runs in that family." Throughout her shift, Tessa caught bits of conversation about the Barretts. They were clearly important in the community. The family had owned land here for generations. Levi had modernized the business, making it more sustainable and profitable. "What happened to his wife?" Tessa finally asked Betty during a quiet moment. Betty's face grew serious. "Car accident. Emma was driving back from the city. Bad storm like the one the other night." She shook her head. "Some said Levi should have gone with her that day, but he had business at the farm. He's never forgiven himself." Tessa's heart ached. No wonder he'd stopped to help her in the rain. "People turned on him after," Betty continued. "The gossip magazines, even some folks in town, said horrible things, that he was cold, that the marriage was in trouble. None of it true, but Levi just withdrew. Runs everything from that big house now, barely comes to town." After her shift, Tessa walked back to the cabin, her mind full of this new information. The cabin felt different now, knowing it belonged to a wealthy man who chose to live simply. She showered and changed, then stood on the porch, looking toward the main house in the distance. Before she could talk herself out of it, she began walking. The main house was larger than it had appeared from afar, a beautiful farmhouse with wide porches and tall windows. Tessa hesitated at the bottom of the steps, suddenly uncertain. The door opened before she could knock. Levi stood there, back in his work clothes, looking surprised. "Tessa," he said. "You didn't tell me who you are," she said softly, not accusingly. Levi's jaw tightened. He stepped aside, inviting her in with a gesture. The interior was beautiful but not ostentatious. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, large windows overlooking the property. Nothing like the mansion she had imagined. Would have changed. "Things?" Levi finally said, pouring 2 glasses of water in the kitchen. "How you saw me?" "Why does that matter?" Tessa asked. Levi looked at her directly for the first time. "Because for 2 days, someone looked at me and just saw a man. Not headlines, not the past." The simple honesty of his answer caught Tessa off guard. She understood suddenly. After her relationship with Mark, who had always been concerned with appearances, Levi's authenticity was refreshing. "I got a job in town," she said, changing the subject, "at Betty's cafe." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Betty makes the best pie in the county." "She told me about your wife," Tessa said gently. "I'm sorry." Levi's face closed off again. He moved to the window, looking out at his land. "Emma loved it here, said it centered her. After she died, the reporters, the rumors, I couldn't face it." "So you hide out here?" "I live here," he corrected. "There's a difference." They fell into silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Tessa sensed there was more to the story of Emma's death, but she didn't push. "I should head back," she said after a while. "Stay for dinner," Levi surprised her by saying, "unless you need to be somewhere." They cooked together, moving around the kitchen in comfortable silence. Levi was different. Here, more relaxed, more himself. He told her about the farm, about his plans to convert more land to natural habitats. Emma's project, he explained. She believed in balance, taking only what we need, giving back the rest. After dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Paint the sky in vivid colors. What will you do when your car's fixed?" Levi asked. The question caught Tessa by surprise. She hadn't thought beyond the next few days. "I don't know, I don't have much to go back to. The cafe job's permanent if you want it," Levi said. "Betty mentioned it." "You've been talking about me?" Tessa smiled. "Small town," he replied, but there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. As days turned into a week, Tessa fell into a routine. She worked at the cafe, spent evenings at the cabin, and occasionally walked to the main house for dinner with Levi. They talked more easily now, though he still kept parts of himself guarded. When her car was finally fixed, Tessa faced a decision. She had enough money saved for a security deposit on an apartment in town. Betty had offered her full-time work. She could start over here. The day she moved her few belongings from the cabin to her new apartment above the town bookstore, Levi came to help. He carried boxes up the narrow stairs, his presence filling the small space. "It's nice," he said, looking around at the sunlit rooms. "It's a start," Tessa replied. "Thank you, Levi, for everything." He nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude. Before he left, he handed her a key. "Cabin's always open if you need quiet." Life settled into a new pattern. Tessa made friends in town. Her apartment became a home, decorated with flea market finds. The cafe job was steady. Sometimes she would drive out to the farm on her days off. Levi would teach her to ride horses, or they would walk the property together. One evening, as they sat on his porch watching a summer storm roll in, Levi took her hand. The touch was gentle, questioning. Tessa laced her fingers through his, answering. Without words, but the peace couldn't last. 2 months after her arrival, a gossip magazine photographer spotted them at the local farmers' market. Levi had been laughing at something Tessa said, his hand resting lightly on her back. The moment, innocent and private, became public in the worst way. "Barrett Millionaire's new flame," screamed the headline. The article was full of insinuations that Tessa was after his money, that she had seduced the grieving widower, that she was a gold digger taking advantage of a vulnerable man. The magazine hit the stands on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Tessa felt the stares at the cafe. Conversation stopped when she approached tables. Someone had written "gold digger" on her car in lipstick. Betty defended her fiercely. "Don't you pay them no mind," she said, wrapping an arm around Tessa's shoulders. This town weathered worse gossip than this. But Tessa was shaken. She hadn't heard from Levi since the story broke. That night, as she scrubbed the hateful words off her car, tears streaming down her face, a familiar truck pulled up. Levi stepped out, his face like thunder. "I saw the car," he said. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Tessa said, dropping the sponge into the bucket. "It is," he insisted. "I should have known better, should have protected you from this." "I don't need protection, Levi, I need—" Tessa stopped, not sure what she needed anymore. "What?" he asked softly. "Honesty," she finally said. "You never talk about Emma, about what really happened. Everyone in town has theories, but you never say her name." Levi's face hardened. "Some things are private. Not when they're destroying us," Tessa countered. "Not when they're standing between us." "There is no us," Levi said, the words like a slap. "There can't be. I thought, but I was wrong." He turned to leave, but Tessa grabbed his arm. "Don't do this. Don't push me away because you're scared." "I'm not scared," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "I'm being realistic. Look what they're doing to you already. It will only get worse." "I don't care what people think," Tessa insisted. "You will," Levi said quietly. "When they dig deeper, when the lies start, when they twist everything good into something ugly." He pulled away. "I can't watch that happen again." He drove away, leaving Tessa standing alone beside her vandalized car, wondering what secrets Levi Barrett was really hiding. The next day, more reporters appeared in town. They came to the cafe asking about Tessa and Levi. Betty chased them out with a broom, but the damage was done. Town gossip shifted from curious to cruel. "Heard she targeted him deliberately," one woman whispered, loudly enough for Tessa to hear. "Found out who he was and set up that whole car accident thing." Tessa dropped a stack of plates, the crash silencing the cafe. "My car really did break down," she said, her voice shaking. "I really did lose my job and my fiancé in one day. And Levi Barrett really did help me when no one else would, without telling me he was rich or famous or anything else." She untied her apron and handed it to Betty. "I'm sorry, I can't today." Tessa drove to the one place she knew she could find peace, the cabin. She sat on the porch, watching the wind in the trees, trying to sort through her feelings. She had come to care deeply for Levi, his quiet strength, his hidden kindness, the way he saw her, really saw her. But now everything was tainted by outside voices, by his reluctance to let her in completely. The sound of a car made her look up. But it wasn't Levi's truck coming up the drive. It was a sleek black car she didn't recognize. A woman stepped out. Elegant, poised, with dark hair pulled back in a severe style, she looked at Tessa with cool assessment. "You must be Tessa," she said. "I'm Catherine Barrett, Levi's sister, and we need to talk." Catherine didn't wait for an invitation. She climbed the porch steps and sat in the chair beside Tessa. "My brother is a private person," she began. "He doesn't let people in easily." "I've noticed," Tessa said. Dryly, a hint of a smile touched Catherine's lips. "He told me how you met. It's very cinematic." "It wasn't planned, if that's what you're implying." "No," Catherine agreed. "I don't think it was. But what's happening now? The media attention. The rumors. It's exactly what Levi has been avoiding for 3 years." "Because of Emma's death," Tessa said quietly. Catherine's eyes narrowed. "What has he told you about that?" "Almost nothing. Just that it was a car accident in a storm. That he blames himself." Catherine sighed, looking out at the land. "My brother carries guilt that isn't his to bear. The night Emma died, they had argued. She wanted to go to a charity event in the city. He was busy with the harvest and couldn't go. She went alone." Tessa felt a chill. "The storm." She was texting him. "An apology when she lost control of the car," Catherine continued. "The media got hold of the phone records, turned it into a scandal, that she was distracted because they were fighting, that Levi had prioritized work over his wife." "That's horrible," Tessa whispered. "It gets worse," Catherine said grimly. "One reporter suggested Emma's death wasn't an accident at all, that Levi had something to do with it." Tessa gasped. "That's ridiculous. Anyone who knows him—" "Exactly," Catherine cut in. "Anyone who knows him. But the public doesn't know him. They see a rich, handsome man who rarely smiles. It was easy to paint him as the villain." "Why are you telling me this?" Tessa asked. Catherine studied her. Because you've done something I thought impossible. You've made my brother smile again. But now the vultures are circling and he's retreating. I don't want him to lose this chance. Chance at what? Happiness, Catherine said simply. Levi deserves to be happy. So do you. Before Tessa could respond, they heard the rumble of a truck. Levi pulled up, his expression darkening when he saw his sister's car. "Catherine," he said as he approached, "what are you doing here?" "Introducing myself to Tessa," Catherine replied calmly. "Since you weren't going to..." Levi's eyes moved between them. "What have you told her?" "The truth," Catherine said, standing. "Something you should try sometime." She touched Tessa's shoulder. "It was nice to meet you. I hope we'll talk again." She left, her car purring down the driveway, leaving Tessa and Levi alone in a heavy silence. "Your sister's interesting," Tessa finally said. "She meddles," Levi replied, but there was no real anger in his voice. "She cares about you," Tessa countered. "She told me about Emma, about what really happened." Levi's jaw tightened. "She had no right." "And you had no right to..." "Shut me out," Tessa said, standing to face him. "To decide for me what I can handle. I lost everything before I met you, Levi. My job, my home, my future. But I'm still standing. I'm stronger than you think." "I know how strong you are," Levi said quietly. "That's not what I'm afraid of." "Then, what?" Tessa demanded. "That I'm not," he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "That I'll let you down. That I'll lose you like I lost her." Tessa stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. "You can't control everything, Levi. Life happens, storms come, but hiding doesn't protect you. It just means you face them alone." Levi looked down at their joined hands. "The reporters, the gossip. It will get worse before it gets better. Then we'll weather it together," Tessa said, "if that's what you want." Levi's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw no shadows. "There. It is," he said simply. "You showed up in my life in a storm, Tessa, and for the first time in years I wanted to stay dry." He leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a gentle kiss that promised more. Tessa felt something settle in her heart, a certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. But as they stood there embracing in the fading light, neither noticed the black sedan parked on the distant road or the woman watching them through binoculars. A woman who looked remarkably like Emma Barrett and whose return would shake the foundations of everything Levi thought he knew about the night his wife died. The next morning, Tessa woke to the sound of rain on the cabin roof. She and Levi had talked late into the night, planning how to handle the gossip and media attention. He had finally opened up about Emma, sharing memories both good and painful. It felt like a new beginning. Tessa dressed for work, feeling lighter than she had in days. As she stepped onto the porch, she found a single wildflower with a note. "Dinner tonight, Elle," she smiled, tucking the flower into her hair. The simple gesture meant more than any expensive gift. At the cafe, Betty was already handling the breakfast rush. "There she is," Betty said warmly. "Feeling better today?" "Much," Tessa replied, tying on her apron. "Good, because those vultures are back." Betty nodded toward the window where a man with a camera stood across the street. "Been there since opening?" Tessa's smile faltered. "They really don't give up, do they?" "Not when there's money to be made," Betty said grimly. "But we're used to protecting our own around here." Throughout her shift, Tessa felt the photographer's eyes on her. She kept her head high, remembering Levi's words from the night before. "Let them look. They'll only see what we show them." At lunch, the cafe door opened and Catherine Barrett walked in. Heads turned as she made her way to the counter. Unlike yesterday, she was dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse. "Miss Barrett," Betty greeted her with surprise. "Haven't seen you in town for a while." "I'm visiting my brother," Catherine said, then turned to Tessa. "May I have a word?" They sat at a corner table. Catherine seemed different today, less polished, more human. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday," she began. "I was abrupt, protective of Levi." "You don't need to apologize," Tessa assured her. "I understand," Catherine studied her. "I think you do. That's why I'm here. Levi called me this morning. He sounded Happy. She smiled slightly. It's been a long time since. I heard that in his voice. Tessa felt a warmth spread through her. He's a good man. Yes, Catherine agreed, but he's also stubborn and private to a fault. The Barrett family curse. She paused. There's something else you should know. Something I didn't tell you yesterday. A sense of unease crept over Tessa. What is it? After Emma died, there were complications, Catherine said carefully. Her family never accepted the accident report. They blamed Levi completely. Her sister Claire was particularly vocal. She threatened to sue to expose the truth, as she called it. What truth? Tessa asked. Catherine sighed. There isn't one. Emma's death was a tragic accident, but grief makes people look for someone to blame. Claire needed Levi to be the villain. What happened to her? She moved away eventually. Last I heard, she was in Europe. Catherine hesitated. But there are rumors she's back, and if she sees these tabloid stories about you and Levi, the implication hung in the air. Tessa felt a chill despite the warm cafe. You think she might cause trouble? I think she never got closure, Catherine said diplomatically, and people who haven't healed can be unpredictable. After Catherine left, Tessa's day seemed dimmer. The photographer across the street was joined by another. By closing time, there were 3. Betty locked the door behind the last customer. I'll walk you to your car, she offered. I can handle it, Tessa said, though she was grateful for the company. The reporters swarmed as soon as they stepped outside. Tessa, how long have you known Levi Barrett? Is it true you staged the accident to meet him? What attracted you to him? The man or the money? Tessa kept walking, head down. Betty shouted at them to back off. Finally, they reached Tessa's car. Don't let them get to you, Betty said. This will blow over. But as Tessa drove to the farm for dinner with Levi, she couldn't shake Catherine's warning about Claire. What if Emma's sister really was back? What would that mean for her and Levi? The main house was lit up against the gathering darkness when she arrived. Levi met her at the door, his face lighting up when he saw her. You wore the flower, he noticed, touching her hair gently. It was perfect, she said, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Inside, he had prepared dinner. The table was set with candles and wildflowers. It wasn't fancy, Levi wasn't the type for grand gestures, but the thoughtfulness touched her deeply. Over dinner, she told him about the reporters outside the cafe and Catherine's visit. My sister needs to mind her own business, Levi muttered. She cares about you, Tessa reminded him, and she mentioned something that worries me. About Emma's sister, Claire. Levi's expression darkened. Claire Wilson. Haven't heard that name. In a while. Catherine thinks she might be back, that she might have seen the tabloid stories. Levi set down his fork. Claire blamed me from the beginning, said I drove Emma to distraction, that the accident was my fault. Nothing I said made any difference. What would she do if she came back? Tessa asked. I don't know, Levi admitted. After the funeral, she threatened all kinds of things. Legal action, media campaigns. She was grieving, angry. Eventually, she just disappeared. Her family said she was traveling. Do you think she'd try to hurt you? Us? Levi reached across the table, taking her hand. I won't let anyone hurt. You, Tessa. Not reporters, not gossips, and certainly not Claire Wilson. After dinner, they sat on the porch swing, watching stars appear in the clearing sky. Levi's arm was around her shoulders, warm and secure. Stay tonight, he said softly. Tessa looked up at him. Are you sure? He nodded, his eyes serious. I'm done hiding, done letting fear dictate my life. That night, in Levi's arms, Tessa felt like she had finally found home. The connection between them was deeper than passion. It was recognition. Two souls who had been broken finding wholeness in each other. The next morning, Tessa woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Levi was already up, standing by the window. In jeans, his hair still damp from the shower, he looked younger, more relaxed. Morning, she said, sitting up. He turned, smiling. There's coffee downstairs when you're ready. Everything felt different, easier, brighter. They had breakfast together, planning their day. Levi needed to check the north fields. Tessa had the day off from the cafe. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. They took his truck, driving past cultivated fields to a wilder part of the property. A wooden bridge crossed a small creek, leading to a meadow filled with wildflowers. Emma designed this, Levi explained as they walked across the bridge, a natural habitat for butterflies and bees. She wanted to balance the farm, taking from the land in some places, giving back in others. "It's beautiful," Tessa said, touching a purple coneflower. "I come here to think," Levi admitted, "to remember why all this matters." They spent the morning there, Levi pointing out different plants and explaining their purpose. His love for the land was evident in every word. As they returned to the truck, Tessa spotted something on the dirt road ahead, a car parked by the bridge. A woman stood beside it watching them. Levi tensed. "Claire," he said, his voice tight. The woman approached slowly. She was elegant, with Emma's dark hair and fine features, but where Catherine's face showed strength, Claire's showed bitterness. "Playing tour guide, Levi?" she called. "Showing your new girlfriend Emma's special place?" "Claire," Levi acknowledged stiffly. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the stories," she said, her eyes fixing on Tessa with cold assessment. "The grieving widower finds love again. How touching." "You have no right to be here," Levi said, stepping slightly in front of Tessa. "I have every right," Claire countered. "My sister died because of you. Or have you forgotten that while romancing your new conquest?" Tessa felt Levi flinch beside her. "That's enough, Claire," he said quietly. "It will never be enough," Claire spat. "Emma would still be alive if not for you in this place. She never wanted to live here. She was miserable." Levi shook his head. "That's not true. Emma loved the farm. She designed that meadow, planned the conservation areas. Because it was the only way she could stand being stuck here," Claire interrupted. "She was trying to make the best of the prison you put her in. The night she died, she was finally escaping." "We had an argument," Levi admitted. "But she wasn't leaving. She was coming home." "That's what you need to believe," Claire said dismissively. Then her eyes narrowed on Tessa. "Does she know, Levi? Does she know what really happened that night?" "I know it was an accident," Tessa spoke up. "I know Levi loved his wife." Claire laughed bitterly. "Love? Is that what he told you?" She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper. "Then explain this." She thrust the paper at Tessa. It was a printout of an email dated the day of Emma's death. From Emma Barrett to Claire Wilson. Subject: Decision made. "Claire, you were right. I can't do this anymore. I've told Levi I'm going to the charity event tonight, but I'm really coming to you. Have the tickets ready. By this time tomorrow we'll be in Paris, and I can finally start living my life again. Love." Tessa felt the ground shift beneath her. She looked at Levi, whose face had gone pale. "This is fake," he said hoarsely. "Emma would never—" "She sent it hours before she died," Claire said triumphantly. "She was coming to me, to escape you. The accident happened because she was rushing to catch a flight, not because she was texting you an apology. If this were real, why didn't you show it to the police?" Levi demanded. "To the reporters? Why wait 3 years?" "Because I promised Emma I'd protect her privacy," Claire said. "But now you're trying to replace her. I won't let her memory be erased." "No one is erasing Emma," Tessa said firmly. "Levi honors her memory every day in how he cares for this land, how he continues. Her work." Claire looked at her with contempt. "What would you know about it? You're just the latest distraction, the rebound. You think what you have is special? He'll discard you just like he would have discarded Emma if she hadn't died first." "That's enough," Levi's voice cracked like thunder. "Leave my property now, Claire, or I'll have you removed." Claire smiled thinly. "I'm going, but I'm not done. The world deserves to know what kind of man you really are." She looked at Tessa. "And you deserve to know what you're getting into." She got into her car and drove away, leaving a heavy silence. Behind, Tessa looked at the email in her hand, then at Levi. "Is there any chance this is real?" Levi's eyes held hers, steady and clear. "No. Emma and I had our problems, but she wasn't leaving. Not like that." "Then why would Claire create this?" "Grief does strange things to people," Levi said quietly. "Claire and Emma were close. After Emma died, Claire needed someone to blame. She chose me. What if she goes to the press with this?" "Then we'll deal with it," Levi said, taking her hand. Together, they drove back to the house in silence, both lost in thought. The peace of the morning had been shattered by Claire's appearance and her shocking claim. Back at the house, Levi made a call to his lawyer while Tessa made coffee. She tried to push Claire's words from her mind, but doubts had crept in. What if there was some truth to the email? What if Emma really had been unhappy? Levi found her on the porch, staring out at the land. "You're wondering if it could be true," he said, sitting beside her. Tessa hesitated. "I believe you loved Emma. I believe she loved you, but marriages are complicated. People keep secrets." Levi sighed. "Emma and I weren't perfect. We argued. Sometimes she missed city life. The last year was hard. We were trying to have a child." His voice caught. "But she wasn't planning to leave. I would have known." "How can you be sure?" Tessa asked gently. Levi was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." He led her to his study, a room Tessa had never entered before. It was lined with bookshelves and a large desk dominated one wall. Levi went to a cabinet, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. He removed a small box and set it on the desk. "I've never shown anyone this," he said, "not even Catherine." Inside the box was a small velvet jewelry case and an envelope. He opened the case first. A necklace lay inside, a simple gold chain with a pendant of 2 intertwined leaves, one gold, one silver. "I had this made for our anniversary," Levi explained. "It was going to be a surprise. The gold leaf for me, the silver for Emma. Connected but different, like us." Tessa touched the necklace gently. "It's beautiful." "The night she died," Levi continued, "we argued about the charity event. I couldn't go. We were in the middle of harvest and a storm was coming. She was upset. Said I always put the farm first." He swallowed hard. "She was right, in some ways. I did prioritize this place. I thought we had time to find the balance." He picked up the envelope. "After she left, I felt terrible. I wrote her this letter apologizing, promising to do better. I was going to give it to her with the necklace when she got home." He handed Tessa the envelope. "Read it, if you want." The letter inside was written in Levi's strong, clear hand. It was raw, honest, a man laying bare his heart, acknowledging his failings, promising to be better. The last line read, "Come home to me, Emma. We'll find our way together." Tears filled Tessa's eyes. She never saw this. "No," Levi said quietly. "The storm hit earlier than expected. She texted me, saying she was turning back. That's the last I heard from her." "I'm so sorry, Levi," Tessa whispered. "I've carried this guilt for 3 years," he admitted, wondering if she really was happy with me, if I could have prevented her death by being a better husband. "You can't know that," Tessa said, taking his hand. "Accidents happen, they're no one's fault." "Claire's email is a lie," Levi said firmly. "Emma wasn't planning to leave the country. She was coming home to me. Claire is twisting what happened to fit her own narrative." "What are you going to do?" "Fight back for once," Levi said. "My lawyer is preparing a cease and desist order. If Claire goes public with these allegations, we'll sue for defamation. Do you think that will stop her?" "I don't know," Levi admitted. "But I'm done hiding, done letting the ghosts of the past control my life." He looked at Tessa intently. "When you skidded off the road that night, something changed for me. Seeing you there in the rain, it was like the universe was giving me a second chance." Tessa stepped closer, touching his face. "We both got a second chance. And I'm not letting Claire Wilson or anyone else take that from us." That night they made plans. If Claire went public with her claims, they would respond with the truth. No more silence, no more retreat. Together, they would weather whatever. Storm came next. As Tessa drove back to her apartment the next morning, she felt stronger, more certain. The doubts Claire had tried to plant had not taken root, but as she turned onto Main Street, she knew immediately that something was wrong. A crowd had gathered outside the cafe. Betty stood on the sidewalk, her face pale. "What's happened?" Tessa asked as she approached. Betty pointed to the cafe window. Written in red paint were the words, "Gold Digger" and "Home Wrecker." "It happened overnight," Betty said. "Sheriff's already been by." Tessa stared at the ugly words, feeling sick. "Claire," she whispered. "You don't know that," Betty cautioned. "I do," Tessa replied. "She confronted us yesterday. made accusations about Emma's death. As they spoke, more people gathered. Some offered to help clean up, others whispered behind their hands. Tessa felt exposed, vulnerable. Her phone rang. Levi. "I just heard," he said without preamble. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she assured him. "But this is just the beginning, isn't it?" "I'm coming to get you," Levi said. "We need to talk." 20 minutes later, his truck pulled up. The crowd parted as he stepped out. He ignored the stares, coming straight to Tessa and taking her hand. "Come with me," he said simply. They drove in silence back to the farm. When they arrived, Catherine was waiting on the porch, her face grim. "It's worse than we thought," she said as they approached. "Claire's gone to the media. It's all over the internet." Inside, she showed them the story on her laptop. "Barrett widow planned escape before deadly crash," read the headline. The article quoted Claire extensively, claiming Emma had been unhappy in her marriage and was planning to leave Levi the night she died. "They're painting me as controlling, abusive," Levi said, his voice tight with anger. "And now they're dragging Tessa into it, suggesting I've moved on with another victim." "We need to respond," Catherine insisted. "Release a statement, show them the truth." "What truth?" Levi asked bitterly. "That Emma and I weren't perfect? That sometimes she was unhappy? That I'm the reason she was on that road that night? That's not fair," Tessa said firmly. "Emma made her own choices. The accident wasn't your fault." "Try telling that to the vultures," Catherine muttered, scrolling through more articles. Levi paced the room, frustration radiating from him. "I should never have let you get involved in this," he said to Tessa. "Now they're attacking you too." "I make my own choices, Levi," Tessa replied. "Just like Emma did. You don't get to decide what's best for me." Her words hung in the air. Levi stopped pacing, looking at her with surprise. "She's right," Catherine said. "And that's exactly what you need to say publicly. That Emma was her own person, making her own decisions. That you respected her then and you respect Tessa now." "It won't stop Claire," Levi pointed out. "No," Catherine agreed. "But it will show everyone else that you're not hiding anymore, that you have nothing to be ashamed of." As they debated their next move, Levi's phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Claire, Wilson is threatening to file a wrongful death lawsuit," he reported after the call. "She claims to have new evidence that I was emotionally abusive to Emma." "That's ridiculous," Catherine exploded. "Emma would have told me if you were abusive. She would have come to me for help." "Unless she was afraid," Tessa said quietly. Others looked at her. "I'm not saying it's true," she added quickly, "but that's what Claire will claim, that Emma was too afraid to tell anyone." "So what do we do?" Levi asked, looking defeated. Tessa stood, resolute. "We find the truth, the real truth, not Claire's version." "How?" Catherine demanded. "Emma's journals," Tessa said. "You mentioned once that she kept journals. Have you read them, Levi?" He shook his head. "I couldn't. After she died, I packed away her things. The journals are in the attic." "That's where we start," Tessa decided. If Emma was truly unhappy, truly planning to leave, she would have written about it. Reading her private thoughts, Levi hesitated. Would she want Claire dragging her memory through the mud? Catherine asked gently, using her death to hurt. "You?" Finally, Levi nodded. "The journals are our best chance to counter Claire's lies, but Tessa," he turned to her, his eyes intense, "whatever we find in those journals, good or bad, we face it together. Deal?" Tessa took his hand. "Deal." As they climbed the stairs to the attic, Tessa felt a strange mix of determination and unease. They were about to uncover Emma's private thoughts, perhaps learn secrets Levi had never known. Would the woman he had loved reveal a truth that could destroy what they were building? Or would her words from the past finally set them all free? The attic was dusty and dim, with morning light filtering through a small window. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, each neatly labeled in Levi's handwriting. He moved to one marked Emma Personal. "I packed everything after the funeral," he explained, his voice tight. "Couldn't bear to look at it then." Inside the box were photo albums, framed pictures, and a stack of leather-bound journals. Levi lifted them carefully, running his fingers over the embossed cover of the top one. "Emma wrote almost every day," he said softly. Said it helped her. Make sense of things. Catherine touched his shoulder. You don't have to do this, Levi. Yes, I do, he replied firmly. For Emma, for Tessa, for all of us. They carried the journals downstairs to the living room. There were 12 in total, spanning the 3 years of Levi and Emma's marriage. We should start with the last one, Tessa suggested gently. The months before she died. Levi nodded, picking up the most recent journal. He opened it, then paused, looking at Tessa with uncertain eyes. Would you read it? He asked. I don't think I can. Tessa understood. These were Emma's private thoughts about her husband, about their marriage. It would be too painful for Levi to read them himself. Of course, she said, taking the journal. She settled into a chair by the window, while Levi and Catherine sat across from her waiting. The journal began 6 months before Emma's death. Tessa read silently at first, trying to get a sense of Emma's voice, her feelings. The early entries were ordinary. Daily activities, small frustrations, moments of joy. Emma wrote about the farm, about planning the butterfly meadow, about dinner with friends. Nothing unusual so far, Tessa reported. She sounds content. She continued reading, flipping pages. About 3 months before the accident, the tone changed. Emma wrote of arguments with Levi about his long hours, about feeling isolated on the farm, about missing city life. There are some difficult entries here, Tessa admitted. Times when she felt lonely, when you were both struggling. Levi nodded, face solemn. We went through a rough patch that spring. The farm was expanding, I was working too much. We talked about it, tried to find balance. As Tessa read on, Emma's entries became more reflective. She wrote of her love for Levi, of her commitment to making their marriage work. She described conversations where they planned for the future, discussed having children. Listen to this, Tessa said, reading aloud. Levi and I stayed up all night talking, really talking like we used to, about what we want, what we fear. He admitted he's been hiding in his work, afraid of failing as a husband, as a father someday. I told him about my fears too, that I'm not cut out for farm life, that I'll never be what he needs. But by dawn, something had shifted. We remembered why we chose each other. This place, it's not a prison. It's the canvas for the life we're building together. Catherine smiled. That sounds like Emma. She could always see the heart of things. Tessa continued reading. The most recent entries showed Emma preparing for the charity event, excited about wearing a new dress, nervous about representing the Barrett family alone. Here's the day before she died, Tessa said. Claire called again, pushing me to move to the city. She means well, but she doesn't understand. Yes, Levi and I have problems. Yes, sometimes I feel isolated here. But running away isn't the answer. We're working on things. The butterfly meadow will be finished next month, and maybe by then we'll have good news to share. The doctor said our chances are better this time. Tessa looked up, questioning. Levi's face was pale. We were trying to have a baby, he explained. Emma had miscarried twice. We were going to try again. Tessa turned to the final entry, written the morning of Emma's death. Her heart pounded as she began to read aloud. Levi and I argued about the charity event. He can't come. Harvest and the storm. I said he never makes time for my things, only the farm matters. It was unfair. I know how important this harvest is, how many people depend on it. I'll apologize when I get home tonight. Marriage isn't about keeping score. It's about understanding each other's priorities, supporting each other's dreams. And despite our struggles, that's what we do. Claire keeps saying I should leave, start fresh. She doesn't understand that what Levi and I have is worth fighting for. Every day we choose each other. Tonight, when I get back, I'll remind him of that. Silence filled the room. Tessa closed the journal gently. She wasn't planning to leave you, she said quietly. She was coming home to you. Claire's email is a forgery. Levi stood abruptly, walking to the window. His shoulders were rigid with emotion. I knew it, he said hoarsely. I knew Emma wouldn't leave like that. Catherine wiped away tears. Claire manipulated everything, used Emma's death to punish you. The question is, Tessa said, what do we do with this information? Levi turned, his face resolute. We stop hiding. We tell the truth, all of it. The plan took shape quickly. They would hold a press conference at the farm. Levi would speak openly about his marriage to Emma, about her death, about the false accusations. They would release select portions of Emma's journals, only those that directly refuted Claire's claims. "And what about us?" Tessa asked Levi, when they were alone. "If you want to step back, I understand," he said, "and this won't be easy." "I'm not going anywhere," she replied firmly, "unless you want me to." "Never," he said, pulling her close. "You're the best thing that's happened to me in 3 years. The storm brought you to me for a reason." The press conference was scheduled for the following afternoon. News spread quickly, and by morning reporters were gathered at the farm gates. Catherine handled the arrangements with practiced efficiency, setting up a podium near the butterfly meadow. That morning, as Tessa helped Levi prepare his statement, a sheriff's deputy arrived. "Mr. Barrett," he said when Levi met him at the door, "there's been an incident in town." "What kind of incident?" Levi asked, tensing. "Break-in at Ms. Rowe's apartment," the deputy explained. "Nothing valuable taken, but the place was ransacked, and there was a message left on the wall." "What message?" Tessa asked, joining them. The deputy hesitated. "It said, 'Leave him alone or join Emma.'" Tessa felt cold fear wash over her. "Claire," she whispered. "We don't know that," the deputy cautioned, "but we're investigating. In the meantime, you might want to stay here, Ms. Rowe, for safety." After he left, Levi paced the living room. "I'm calling this off," he declared. "The press conference, all of it." "It's too dangerous." "No," Tessa said firmly. "That's exactly what Claire wants, to frighten us into silence. We stick to the plan." "She threatened you," Levi argued, "explicitly." "It's just words," Tessa insisted. "She's desperate. She knows. We have the truth on our side." By afternoon, the farm was surrounded by media. Catherine had arranged for security, keeping reporters contained to a designated area. Local townspeople came too, standing behind the press, showing their support. At exactly 3 o'clock, Levi stepped up to the podium. Tessa and Catherine stood slightly behind him. He looked strong, determined, no longer the recluse hiding from the world. "3 years ago," he began, "I lost my wife Emma in a tragic accident. In the aftermath, there were rumors, accusations, and pain that drove me into isolation. Recently, those accusations have resurfaced, accompanied by new claims that are not just hurtful but false." He spoke clearly, without notes, from the heart. He talked about his marriage to Emma, the good times and the challenges. He acknowledged their struggles but emphasized their commitment to each other. "The night Emma died," we had argued. "That's true. I've carried that guilt for 3 years, wondering if things might have been different. But contrary to recent allegations, Emma was not planning to leave me. She was not escaping an unhappy marriage." He held up Emma's journal. "These are my wife's private thoughts, which I've never read until yesterday. Out of respect for Emma, I will not share most of what's written here, but I will share her final entry, written the morning she died." He read the entry aloud, his voice steady despite the emotion. When he finished, there was complete silence from the crowd. "My sister-in-law, Claire Wilson, has claimed that Emma sent her an email planning to leave the country that night. That email is a forgery. Emma was coming home to me. The accident that took her life was just that, a tragic accident." He paused, looking directly at the cameras. "For 3 years, I've hidden from the world, from the pain, from the memories. Then, in another storm, I met Tessa Rowe." He gestured to Tessa, who stepped forward to stand beside him. "Tessa showed me that life goes on, that love can come again, that hiding from pain only prolongs it. I will not hide anymore. Not from false accusations, not from painful memories, and certainly not from a chance at happiness." He turned to Tessa, taking her hand. "Emma will always be part of who I am, part of this land. But Tessa is my future, and I won't let anyone threaten that future with lies." Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. Levi answered calmly, honestly. Yes, he and Emma had problems. In their marriage. No, she was not planning to leave him. Yes, he had the evidence to prove Claire's email was a forgery. As the press conference continued, Tessa noticed movement at the back of the crowd. Claire Wilson pushed her way forward, her face contorted with anger. "Liar," she shouted, pointing at Levi. "You're twisting everything. Emma hated it here. She hated being with you." Security moved toward her, but Levi held up a hand to stop them. "Let her speak," he said quietly. Claire stormed to the front, facing Levi across the podium. You think reading a few journal entries proves anything? Emma wrote what she thought you wanted to hear. She was afraid of you. That's not true, Claire, Levi said calmly. Emma wasn't afraid of me or anyone. She was strong, independent. You know that. Then why did she tell me she was leaving? Claire demanded. Why did she ask me to book tickets to Paris? She didn't, Levi replied. You forged that email. I have proof, Claire shouted, her voice breaking. I have her suitcase. She packed it that night, ready to leave with me. A murmur went through the crowd. Levi looked confused. What suitcase? The one she left at my house the day before. Claire's eyes were wild now. She brought it secretly, said she'd be back for it the next night. Tessa watched Claire carefully. Something wasn't right. She stepped forward. Claire, she said gently, if Emma left a suitcase with you, what was in it? Claire turned on her. None of your business. You're just his latest victim. Was it clothes? Tessa pressed. Personal items, things she'd need if she was leaving the country? Claire hesitated, thrown off by the specific questions. Yes, of course. Catherine moved to stand beside Tessa. What color was the suitcase, Claire? Blue, Claire said immediately. Her favorite blue suitcase. Catherine and Levi exchanged a glance. Emma didn't have a blue suitcase, Catherine said. Hers was red, always red. Claire's face flushed. I meant red. It was red. What else was in it? Tessa asked, keeping her voice calm, non-confrontational. Besides clothes, her passport, Claire stammered, and jewelry, family pieces. Emma's passport was found in her purse after the accident, Levi said quietly, and she never took her grandmother's jewelry off. She was wearing it when she died. Claire's composure cracked. You're all against me. You've always been against me. Emma was my sister, mine, and you took her from me. Suddenly the truth became clear to Tessa. This wasn't about Levi at all. It was about Claire's grief, her inability to accept that her sister's death was a random, senseless accident. Claire, Tessa said softly, you didn't lose Emma because... Tell Levi, you lost her because accidents happen, terrible, unfair accidents that make no sense. No, Claire cried, tears streaming down her face. He killed her. If she wasn't with him, she wouldn't have been on that road. If she wasn't with me, she would have been somewhere else, Levi said gently. Living her life, taking risks, driving in storms. What happened wasn't anyone's fault. Then why does it hurt so much? Claire sobbed, her anger crumbling into raw grief. Why can't I stop blaming you? Because it's easier than accepting that sometimes there's no one to blame, Catherine said, moving to Claire's side. I miss her too, Claire. Every day. Claire's shoulders slumped. 3 years of rage seemed to drain out of her, leaving only exhaustion and sorrow. Catherine put an arm around her, leading her away from the cameras. Levi turned back to the reporters. I think we're done here, he said firmly. My family needs privacy now. The press conference ended. Security escorted the media from the property. Inside the house, Catherine sat with Claire in the kitchen, the two women talking quietly. Years of bitterness couldn't be undone in a moment, but it was a start. Tessa and Levi walked to the butterfly meadow. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wildflowers. Do you think she'll be okay? Tessa asked, looking back toward the house. Claire? Levi considered. Eventually. Grief does strange things to people, makes them create stories they can live with. Like you did, Tessa said gently. Telling yourself you were responsible for Emma's death. Levi nodded. It was easier than accepting I couldn't control it. Couldn't prevent it, and now. He looked at her, his eyes clear and calm. Now I know that life is unpredictable, storms come without warning, but so do good things. He took her hand. Sometimes the best things arrive when you least expect them. They crossed the wooden bridge to the heart of the meadow. Butterflies danced around them, moving from flower to flower. I have something for you, Levi said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the necklace he had shown her before, the gold and silver intertwined leaves. Levi, Tessa whispered. That was for Emma. No, he corrected her. It was for the woman I love, then and now. He placed it in her palm. I'm not asking you to replace Emma. No one could. But you've brought light back into my life, Tessa. You've shown me that it's possible to honor the past without living in it. Tears filled her eyes. Are you sure? More sure than I've been about anything in 3 years. He closed her fingers around the necklace. Take it, not as a promise, but as a beginning. Tessa opened her hand, looking at the delicate leaves. It's beautiful, like what we're building, he said. Different pieces coming together to make something new. He fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers gentle against her skin. The pendant rested just above her heart. What happens now, she asked. With the media, with Claire? Life goes on, Levi said simply. The truth is out there now. Some will believe it, some won't. What matters is that we know it. As they walked back toward the house, Catherine met them on the porch. Claire's calmer now, she reported. I'm going to take her to my place for a few days. She needs help, Levi. Professional help. Whatever she needs, Levi agreed. She's still family. After Catherine and Claire left, the farm was quiet again. The security team remained at the gates, keeping away any lingering reporters. Levi and Tessa sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Stay tonight? Levi asked. Yes, Tessa replied, and tomorrow night and the night after that. He smiled, pulling her close. Is that a proposal, Tessa Rowe? It's a beginning, she echoed his words. The rest we'll figure out together. 6 months later, on a clear autumn day, Tessa stood in the butterfly meadow again, but this time she wore a simple white dress and wildflowers in her hair. Betty from the cafe had helped arrange everything. The entire town had come, standing in a circle around the meadow. Levi waited for her on the wooden bridge, looking strong and steady in a dark suit. Catherine stood beside him, beaming with joy. Even Claire was there, sitting quietly in the back row. Therapy was helping her find peace, acceptance. As Tessa walked toward Levi, she felt the necklace against her skin, the gold and silver leaves, symbols of 2 lives intertwined. She thought of the night they met, the storm that had seemed like the end of her world, but turned out to be the beginning of something beautiful. When they exchanged vows, Levi's voice was clear and strong. You showed up in a storm, he said, and taught me to stay dry, to face the rain, not hide from it. Tessa squeezed his hands. And you gave me shelter when I had nowhere to go, a place to rebuild, to start again. I promise to be your shelter, Levi vowed, through whatever storms may come. And I promise to be your safe harbor, Tessa replied, a place to come home to always. As they sealed their promises with a kiss, butterflies rose around them in a cloud of color. Life wasn't perfect. There would be challenges ahead, difficult. Days, more storms to weather, but they would face them together. 2 people who had lost everything and found something greater, a love born in the storm, strong enough to last through all seasons. That night, as they danced under strings of lights in the meadow, surrounded by friends and family, Tessa looked up at the stars emerging in the twilight sky. Thank you, she whispered to the universe that had brought them together. For what? Levi asked, holding her close. Tessa smiled, touching the necklace at her throat. For the storm that led me here, for the chance to begin again. To new beginnings, Levi said, his eyes full of love. And to weathering all storms, Tessa added, together. Above them, stars filled the night sky, constants in an ever-changing world. Just as they had found constancy in each other, a shelter in the storm, a haven in the calm, a love to last through all seasons. The end.